Hey folks, if you go into this week's content, you'll see a zip folder called ch11.zip. When you unzip that, we're going to have some examples from jQuery UI. So they're all reasonably simple because that's the nature of jQuery UI, so let's just take them in order. First, I'm going to show you the accordion, which you've already seen, but then we'll just discuss quickly how to implement it with options. You see I'm hovering in this case, and the hover is actually making the accordion work. Now I can click, and you see that that holds steady. So I encourage you to play around with this, but now let's look at the code. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this in Sublime. Hopefully it works. I'm just going to drag it to my Sublime icon, and there it is right there. So what's of note here is that we have a jQuery UI custom with min CSS, and then the jQuery CDN, and then the minified version of jQuery UI. But now we have our options. So we already know there's an accordion selector and then the accordion method. But here are the options. I have event mouse over, height style content, and collapsible equals true. There's no active state in here. So that's why on hover or mouse over, we see the accordion open up. So here's our accordion, and the rest is pretty straightforward. So once again, let's look at height style. Height style will limit to the content. In this case, for example, we have only a little bit of text, and here we see 3 reasons. So whatever that content is, that'll be the height. And it will be able to collapse when it's mouse out. So that's a very quick way to do that. Now I want you to imagine what it would be like to code this from scratch without the help of jQuery or jQuery UI. Well, we'd have to use the set interval or set timeout method in JavaScript, and we'd have to alter the CSS, so it would be quite verbose. And in addition to that, we'd have to have an on-hover event triggering the action. So I think we can agree that jQuery UI makes functionality like this a little bit easier for us to implement. So here's an example of a button with a dialog box. This dialog box is going to look an awful lot like a tooltip. So if I click on that, I see my dialog box. We'll leave that open and go ahead and look at our HTML. Okay, so I'm going to open it up in Sublime again. And in this case, we have a div called a book. Now, if you look at this, we have an anchor tag that just says ID book, and then we have an image source tag. So when we look at this, that makes it into a button function. Now that's part of the beauty of jQuery UI. We can take almost anything and convert it into a button where it's actually clickable. And now at this point we can apply a click listener, and then we can open up the dialog with the dialog method and turn it into a modal window. So if we look at the dialog, this is the dialog, and we currently set it to be display none. And that is all in the documentation for the dialog. So if we go ahead and close it, click open again, we see that it grays out. The background is white here, and it grays out into a modal effect. So there are many more options with this dialog, but this is just a rough overview of the code from the book and how jQuery UI can enhance your user's experience. So I'll close that, and let's do something really fun. I think of the collection of scripts in this week's content, the box slider's one of the more complicated ones. So note how it has a box slider.css. Well, I got that right from the box slider plugin website. Now also you can use GitHub. GitHub has box slider too. So I'm going to go ahead and open it, and we'll take a good look at what we see for functionality. Well, look at this. We've got pagination with buttons, and we also have a play and a pause button. So if I click play, it's going to run on its own. I think it was set for about 5 seconds. There we go. So now you see the box slider working, and it has handles to drag, and we can go wherever we want. And we can also pause it so it stays in that screen. So right now we're paused, and it shouldn't move at all. We can go ahead and play again, and wait the time period, and now it moves automatically, which is a nice effect. So let's take a look at this function. I'm going to go ahead and open up the JS folder here. This is the minified file for the box slider, so we won't get much benefit out of looking at that. That's just the engine that runs it. But what you should know with these more advanced queries or more advanced plugins is that the script source tag will come at the end of all of the jQuery. So the box slider itself, now notice how there is no jQuery UI here. No, it's all maintained inside the box slider min. So we have jQuery, but no jQuery UI, and this is a plugin. So we have slider.boxSlider. It starts auto true, so it's automatically running on load. We have controls of visible, so that's true. Captions are also visible. And we have the number of slides, the actual width, and the margin for each one. Now, if you were to go to the box slider documentation, you can see many more elements to that box slider. So you can see it both in GitHub as well. So that is a nice thing. So next thing to show is the Cycle 2 plugin. Now this is sort of the box slider, but weaned down in a very lean element using a cycle. So when we look at the source code on this guy, it's simply rotating through all of the 5 images. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. You'll see there's no external JS because what we're looking at is a lot more simple. And in this case, we're grabbing Malsup's cycler. And in this case, we look at the properties and we see the cycle effects is scrolling horizontally. It runs every 2 seconds. That's in milliseconds. The caption itself would be in this div. And the template itself would be slide number, slide title, which in this case is empty. So we have front, left side, back, office, and conference with no alt tag. So let's talk about Malsup for a little bit. And this is one of the most reputable plugins that you'll find. You'll see jQuery plugins by Malsup, and he's got several. And this guy's been around for about 12 years, 13 years, and jQuery, he's been around longer than jQuery, in fact. So he was making this stuff in JavaScript before. But the Cycle 2 is right here, and they always have demos. And as I said from the lecture, is when you look at this stuff, if they have demos specifically, that's a great way to implement. So he's got a tremendous amount of stuff, and a lot of backing and a lot of very unique types of slideshows. This is more of a shuffle, which is really nice. But Malsup is a guy you want to bookmark on your browser because he's very credible and he's got a slew of work. In fact, this is his download page for Cycle 2. And he's been developing for a really long time, so you can really trust him. So basically, well, what is this? Do I have to memorize this? No, these are just properties that Malsup created for his own plugin. But you're going to have to, if you want to implement his stuff, you have to just go through a heavy amount of documentation. All right, so that's the cycle. This date picker is very, very, dare I say the term money? It's extremely, I'll call it bank as well. It's very reliable, and the beauty of this is that it is a good fallback. Now, if you were to use the date picker that Chrome has, let's go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and create a quick script. Because I want you to know the differences here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a input type equals date. Just this simple thing right here. And I'm going to go ahead and save it as an HTML so that Chrome will recognize it. I'll call it date.html. I call it data there. This should work because Chrome is such an exceptional browser. So I just have an input type date there, and I'm going to go ahead and open it in Chrome. And now I can click on this. But if you look at this, very similar, right? But the fact is that this will work with jQuery with JavaScript turned off, which is a really nice thing. So you can actually go here and it will change the month. I can go here and change the day. I can click X and it'll go back. I can click like this and go back. So this date picker is default with Chrome. Unfortunately, it's not going to look great in other browsers. For example, if I were to open it with, let's go ahead and open it with Safari. And hopefully this, hopefully it runs. There's our Safari, and this is date. It shouldn't take this long to open up, for heaven's sake. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And you see that there is nothing there. So that's why jQuery's date object is a huge part of what we do. So you can always do this as a fallback and keep the the version with Chrome, and it looks very, very similar. It's a nice thing. So, and it's up to date. It'll actually do leap years. So That's another benefit of this. So I'm going to close this, and now we can do just two more. One's a Lightbox, and the other one will be tabs. So this is the Lightbox, and there's the Lightbox right there, and it looks quite breathtaking. If you do this on mouse over, you can see that it has a nice effect, and we can close it. And that's a Lightbox. Very, very handy. I do appreciate Fancybox a little more. I think Fancybox is like Lightbox, but on steroids. So this right here is the Lightbox minified. You see it's always at the bottom below this. And you're likely to see this in the footer on certain demos as well. So what is the value of this, right? We've got data Lightbox. As long as they have the values here, this will be in its own slideshow. So the Lightboxes are built on a title. So if the Lightbox is going to be Vecta, it's going to be Vecta. Okay, and the title is what you see at the bottom, so you can have your caption in the title. It's a nice effect and very simple to use. I mean, it looks pretty good out of the box, which you just saw. So anyway. Lastly, these are the tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it comes straight from our text, and you can see the tabs. They save state. They tell us what tab is clicked. This is Zach, who actually works over at the Continuing Ed. Does a great job, and he's the author of our textbook. So we'll close this out, and we'll take a good look at the code, and I'm going to open it with Sublime Text, and here we see the same jQuery UI below the jQuery JS, and it doesn't matter where the CSS is. It's generally loaded first because you want to group CSSs together, but as long as jQuery UI is below jQuery, you're going to be good. And all I'm doing here is having tabs with the tabs method. So you have your selector and whatever the jQuery UI method is. That's kind of the lesson of the week. And here are the three tabs. And if you look, we have ID for the hashtag tabs1, and then we have tabs2 and tabs3. So these IDs have to match the anchor tabs for each tab, and as long as you stick with the tabs HTML, you're going to be in great shape. So there are some several very simple to implement, high-level functioning widgets and effects from jQuery UI. Hopefully they can help you with your final project.